Okay, have a couple of really great reads since the last video I made. Welcome back if you're here. Yeah, so the first came about from a recommendation from, not a personal recommendation, but a recommendation from the author Ann Patchett, who owns Parnassus Books in Nashville and makes, often publishes some shorts on YouTube, one of which is a regular series that she calls New to You. If you haven't read this book, then it's new to you. So they're not just new books. And one of them, which I found a little surprising, was a John le Carré novel. I just, wouldn't peg her for a spy novel reader, and I'm not either. Never really attracted me. But I had always wanted to read something by John le Carré just because he's such a celebrated author. And I had the great thing about the internet is you can find all sorts of information, recommendations from different sources, just readers, literary critics. I had thought about sort of his more, typical spycraft centered novels like Tinker Tailor or A Spy Who Came In From the Cold. But Ann Patchett had recommended A Perfect Spy. And I think the way she described it was it's not so much a spy novel as it is a novel about a spy. And I think that was a really good description. I just really enjoyed this book. I bought a used copy, and the cover's a little beat up, but yeah, Perfect Spy. It's a little chunky, and as per her description, it's not. Most of it is not very fast paced, so it's not really, all intrigue and action. Although there's certainly elements of spycraft within the story, but as she said, it's really a novel about a spy named Magnus Pym, a spy for British intelligence. After in the period after the war, through the Cold War era, this book was written published in the mid '80s, I believe. Yeah, so it's really the story of Magnus Pym. It's his story as told by him as he's sitting down to essentially write his memoir. And this is after he has essentially gone to ground. So he has made the decision that he's thrown in the towel, hasn't told anybody about this, and disappears to a little hideaway that he had established for himself many years prior, that no one, including his family or closest friends, knew about. And so the novel is written in sort of, alternating narratives. So one is his story from childhood, kind of as he's thinking about it, writing it down. And then the other is sort of the search for him, a frantic search for him, as you can imagine, the disappearance of somebody with decades of sensitive information and skills would bring about. And yeah, so that's mostly the structure. It's pretty consistent throughout. I think towards the end of the novel, it doesn't necessarily stick to that strict alternation, but most of it is. It's just so well written. I don't know why I was surprised by that, but this is a very literary novel. So I guess if you like the sort of fast paced spycraft kind of story. I don't know how satisfying this will be, but this is really so good. And yeah, I believe Ann Patchett said it was like in her top 5 favorite novels or something. So that's why I kind of looked for it and thought, hell, I'll take that recommendation. So yeah, just great. Sort of peering into the life experiences that made this man who he is. I mean, let's face it. Even if you have some code and you feel like you're doing important work for your country, you know, it does select for people who are okay with subterfuge and deception and so when people betray their own country or become double agents or switch sides and I'm not sure that should surprise anybody, right? So Magnus tells his story, and he's really directing it to the men in his life who've been really important. This is after he disappears after death of his father, and his father plays sort of a really pivotal role in his development. Rick Pym, just 100% con man through and through. And you kind of see how those formidable years were shaped by that personality and that relationship. So he's often addressing his experiences and how they may have affected him to his boss, Jack, his son Tom, who's away at school, not so much to his wife. But yeah, so yeah, it's really interesting. Really, gives some insight at least into this character's psychological development, and the things that shaped him, and the people that influenced him. And I, it is introspective. Sometimes people become introspective, maybe a little too late in life. And I think this character wants better for his son. So yeah, don't want to sort of give away too many other plot points there, but it's just so good. It really is. Highly recommend it, right? Even if the last thing you ever thought you would pick up is a spy novel. This is just a really good post-war novel. There's some crazy quote on the jacket or in the back cover. Philip Roth said it was the best English novel since the war, meaning World War II. That's very high praise. Goes beyond the Call of Duty when people are asked for quotes to use in promotion of the book. Philip Pullman as well, who wrote his Dark Materials, said it's his best book, one of the finest English novels of the 20th century. I haven't read enough to know if that seems a little much, but it's excellent, really good. After that, a bit of a chunky book. I went back to an author I haven't read in decades. So I read finally, after having tried to start this maybe a couple times decades ago, I read The Crying of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. I would say back in the 90s, I read Gravity's Rainbow, loved it, read V, really enjoyed it. And then I think I just felt like there's so many books out there. There's so many authors. I'm not necessarily a person who gets a little obsessed with an author and just wants to go through everything they've written. But I'm certainly glad I got back to Pynchon after all these times. It's kind of inspiring me to read some of his other books, a couple of which I have and have never read. Yeah, so I kind of had mixed feelings about The Crying of Lot 49. It's very small, unlike many of his books. It's essentially a novella. I think he said, I think his quote was that it was a short story with a glandular problem or something. Yeah, so it's a novella. It's pretty quick to get through. The prose is excellent. It's as you would expect from Pynchon. The story is a bit more whimsical. I mean, he does have all these like sort of wacky elements, throughout his novels, even if some of the subject matter is quite serious. He plays around with silly names. The main character is Oedipa Maas. Her husband's nickname is Mucho. So that there's certainly a good dose of some silliness in there. Yeah, one of the things that turns me off a little bit, and this is just a personal thing. It's not it's certainly no slight on the work itself. I guess I don't have I was born in the mid 60s. I don't remember the 60s. I certainly remember the 70s. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for that period. A lot of the slang and the dress and the I don't know, just a lot of the cultural elements of that time period kind of make me cringe a little bit. So one of the things that turns me off a little bit about this book is that it's not just the dialogue that contains sort of the some of the language of the time, which is perfectly appropriate. Even the third person narration occasionally does. So it makes it feel dated, even though, it is a story that takes place during a time period in this country. So you expect the environment, the conversation, the culture to reflect that. The third person narration doesn't necessarily have to. So, I mean, I'm picking nits here, and it's just my personal thing. I think that's one of the things that sort of turned me off decades ago when I first picked this book up, and then I just put it down. I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. I did enjoy it. Typical of Pynchon, it's especially in that era, heavy themes of paranoia, things that are hidden from most people's consciousness. And then, of course, once people become aware of those things that have been hidden to them, then the line between things that may be real and things that may be products of your paranoia start to become difficult to distinguish. And so that's definitely in there. So, it was kind of a fun read. And it was nice to have a short read after A Perfect Spy. Didn't enjoy it nearly as much as A Perfect Spy, but nevertheless, I'm glad I finally read it. And then the second really great read that I experienced, and actually just finished this novel this morning, is The Lions of Al-Rassan by Guy Gavriel Kay. So Guy Gavriel Kay is, I I think, an author, especially given the sheer volume of fantasy that's kind of out there in booktube and book talk, and people, I think people should be talking way more about him. He's not a new author. He's been around forever. In fact, I think people have speculated his latest novel might be his last or something like that. A Canadian author. I believe this is the first novel I've read by him, and it was just wonderful. So, moving away from modernism and postmodern. I mean, this is just storycraft done incredibly well. I'm not a fantasy reader, so I can't make comparisons to many other popular fantasy authors. I just not. It's usually not where my reading takes me. I believe he started out with some of his early books. I think were more in the high fantasy, meaning more kind of supernatural elements, wizards and dragons kind of fantasy. But he eventually moved towards, I think, what people often label as historical fantasy. So he creates stories that are clearly, and it's not subtle, clearly inspired by times and places in history, and changes the names, right? Makes up country names, makes up religions, but it's very clear what inspired it. So in The Lions of Al-Rassan, it's clearly medieval Spain, so the Iberian Peninsula, and there are three primary religions. It's very easy to see which ones are essentially supposed to be the sort of equivalent of Christianity or Islam or Judaism. And it's Al-Rassan is kind of like the southern territory of the Iberian, what is essentially the Iberian Peninsula, that has been under sort of Islamic rule for quite some time, and was named Al-Rassan. And then the northern part, which is still, and the Asherites are the religious sect there, the ruling religious sect. And then the Jadites are kind of like the Christian equivalents, who still primarily rule in the north, which is the part of the former Esperania. And then the Kindath, which are essentially equivalent to the Jews. And he uses kind of the celestial bodies as the different sort of focal points for their symbolic worship. I don't know what my dog is destroying here. So the Jadites are sort of like use the sun as their sort of symbolic, even though they are worshiping God. Is sort of their symbolic center of worship. The Asherites are sort of the children of the stars, and the Kindath are the wanderers under the moons, and this world has two moons. So, and it's just, the prose is just silky smooth, right? It's not overly poetic. It's not spare and functional. It's just like, oh gosh, it's hard to find any passage in a 500-page book that's even slightly awkward, right? It's just an extremely talented writer, and it's just a great story, right? So the lions of Al-Rassan refer to different sort of different lesser kings. Now that the region is kind of still torn, you still have these kind of fiefdoms, and so it's I mean, I'm not going to say it's focused on the conflicts between the rulers within religious sects as well as across religious sects, and that's primarily Jaddite, Asharite, and so like sort of Christian, Muslim kind of conflict. But it's really focused on three central characters and their relationship. And so it provides, on a personal level, a sharp contrast between the cultural and religious and societal conflicts and attitudes. So while you have, dogmatic believers who want holy war and simply just want to take back territory from another religious group that was taken from them at some point in history. Just lots of hatred and horrible treatment of one another on a societal level. You have three main characters, one each from each religion, who end up together and form extremely strong bonds. And so it's a clear contrast between how on a personal level people can set aside those differences in background and just be the ultimate in loyal friends, even when other factors are, potentially pulling them apart. This is just a great story. I think from what I've seen, on BookTube, people who've never read Guy Gavriel Kay and pick this up because a lot of people give this book a lot of praise, just love it. And then people who are just Guy Gavriel Kay fanatics often will rank this either at the top of his works or close to it. And I haven't read any of his other works, but I can see why it gets so much praise. It definitely deserves it. Some of the other books that are highly recommended from him are The Song for Arbonne, which I think was published a few years before this. And then one later work, Brightness Long Ago, gets a lot of praise as well. And then I think there's a duology, which is a Sarantine mosaic. So much of these works, like this work, are clearly inspired by specific times and places in history. I think A Song for Arbonne sort of takes place in what's essentially Provence, and then there are others that take place in what clearly would be Italy, at least modern day Italy. So I'm anxious to get back to it, not right away, but this was just a wonderful book and highly recommend it. Definite change of pace from probably Guy Gavriel Kay and medieval Spain-inspired story. I'm just starting Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. I just figured I should check out her work after she recommended such a fantastic novel and a perfect spy. I'm not sure what's up after that, but next time I'll talk about my future reads. And so thanks for stopping by.